Hey there, poker friends. It is Choppadong again, and we are diving into a more intermediate strategy this time. Hopefully, you have seen the Red Chip Heroes Poker Podcast inaugural debut, and you liked it, you subscribed, and you rang the notification bell because if you did, then you probably got the alert that this podcast just dropped. And this podcast is going to be GTO, Game Theory Optimal versus Exploitative Poker Play. It's a little bit more of an intermediate strategy. I'm going to assume that you have a working knowledge of the basics, but dive in. If you're interested and you are still a beginner and you want to see what this can become, let's rock and roll. But of course, as usual, I'll just start with the lead page here, Choppadong out there on Twitter land. You can follow me out there. Follow me on YouTube, all the good little joyful places that you will find me. Let's cue up the old slideshow and let's get the rocking and rolling because, again, this is a Red Chip Heroes Poker Podcast. And that's what we're going to do inside DFS Army and the Sharp app and the poker communities. We're going to build out and we're going to create a poker community that is educating and teaching you to play better poker, whether it's live, whether it's cash games, tournaments, whether it's small stakes, big stakes, whether it's PLO like Pot Limit Omaha or No Limit Hold'em or any game in between like your little home game and Pass the Trash. We might discuss it inside the community. So I will throw the link to the Discord down there in the bottom, and you can feel free to jump in and join us. Where do we start? Well, Game Theory Optimal versus Exploitative Poker. Game Theory Optimal, or GTO, is a popular buzzword out there in the industry these days. And first, I'm going to assume that you understand that online poker is tougher than live poker. But GTO, or Game Theory Optimal, is very prevalent online, even at the lower stakes. There are a lot of people that study these charts and are trying to play in an unreadable fashion. And GTO is a way to play to make sure you cannot be exploited by your opponent. If you don't have any reads on your opponent doesn't have any reads on you, playing GTO with the algorithms is just damn near perfect, and it is almost unbeatable. And over time, you're just making more decisions. You're randomizing your decisions, and your opponents are not going to be able to get a read on you to exploit you. That's just basically Game Theory Optimal in a nutshell. Now, live low stakes players are so bad these days. They've always been bad, but they're so bad that they're only worried about their two cards. They're not worried about what your betting patterns mean, what your sizing patterns mean, what it could mean when you show down Jack 8 suited from under the gun or things like that. They're not that concerned about that. They're more concerned about their own two cards and whether or not they think their top pair is good. And therefore, you can change all sorts of things about your game, from your ranges to your bet sizing to everything. Once you find some exploits or some weaknesses inside your opponents, it's good to have a GTO baseline. It's good to have a working knowledge of what Game Theory Optimal poker is and how it's played. But you're going to change to exploit the opponent once you see something to exploit. That's how you're going to maximize your EV. That's going to maximize your win rate and your hourly component at those live games, way above and beyond what GTO can produce. Now, as you start getting higher and higher stakes in the online and live stakes poker world, you're going to be shifting back to a lot more GTO principles because your opponents are going to be higher skilled and they're going to be less exploitable. Okay, so GTO also memorizes very, very complicated charts. You can do that in live exploitative poker as well, but man, you have to mix in partial frequencies and different bet sizes and all sorts of stuff with GTO it's just very, very time consuming, very, very hard to do, which again is why a lot of people don't do it. Exploitative poker searches out those specific weaknesses. This guy's aggressive. He tends to bet a lot, so I can probably check and call and keep his range wide open, versus that guy there never bets unless he has top pair or better, so I should be betting into him with impunity and just forcing him to fold every pot that he doesn't have the nuts in. Okay? Again, just two different ways to play. A GTO chart oftentimes looks like this. It has multiple colors in it. You're looking at green, which is call or check. You're looking at the orange, which is bet small and at what frequency. And you're looking at the red, which is bet large. If you can see the red in there, say like on these pocket eights, this little sliver of red, or on ace king, this little sliver of red. I just found this on the internet. I don't know what the scenario is here, but I'm telling you that You might be including like a king five suited as a bluff in your big bet size to balance out the times you have ace king on some form of a flop that this example was created for. You're going to be doing a lot of checking and a lot of folding or a lot of calling. You're going to be betting small the majority of the time if you held king eight suited here, and you're going to bet very big a very, very small amount of time. You might bet a third of the pot here most of the time, and then you might bet 2/3 or 3/4 pot with this little teeny tiny 5% of the time. And you're just going to have to memorize all of the different scenarios for all of the different hands that you have and all of the different concepts and why you would bet big, why you would bet small, what you're trying to balance against, and what you're trying to achieve. And as you can tell, if you had some ace king hand here, you're mixing and matching. You have ace king this time, you're going to play it, bet it small. You have ace king that time, you're going to bet it big. You have ace king the other time, you're going to check. And this is on the same general board texture. This isn't on some, well, when I pick up the pair, I bet big. When I pick up a draw, I bet small. No, this is randomizing your actions based on frequencies of betting. Now, you might use things like, if I have additional equity, I'll bet a little bit bigger. Personally, when I'm playing in the casinos, I like to play my suited connectors aggressively if I hold what I call the suit of the day. That keeps me at about a 25% partial frequency with my suited connectors, and it's random because when I go to the casino, I don't know what the suit of the day is. Oftentimes, I will just pick one in my head. The first hole card I get, I look down at it. Oop, it's a diamond. Suit of the day today is diamonds. Every time I see 6, 7 of diamonds, I'm going to play it aggressively. If I see 6, 7 of clubs, spades, or hearts, I won't. And that keeps me in about a 25% partial frequency range. And tomorrow it might be clubs. The next day it might be hearts. It might be hearts 3 days in a row. I have no damned idea. I just know that when I go there, I randomize. Another way to randomize those types of situations. I like Jack 10 suited. Sometimes I raise it, sometimes I don't. Or that villain is rather tight. Sometimes I bluff at him, sometimes I don't. How do you determine when you do and when you don't? Well, like I said, you can use the suits in your hand, or some people will look at a clock. If it's on the bottom half of the hour, they raise. If it's on the top half of the hour, they don't. Or the top quarter of the hour, or the first 20 minutes. Those types of situations help you randomize your actions and keep your better skilled opponents from taking advantage of you. Is it needed at 1-2, no limit, or 2-3, no? No, probably not. Against some opponents that you come across, probably. But if you just disregard this 9 times out of 10, this randomization and trying to play balanced, and nah, screw that, man. 9 times out of 10, you're not doing yourself any favor. In fact, you're probably costing yourself money. Here's another GTO chart that shows you the flop and the scenario. This is a tournament. Oh, looks like cash game with all 100 big blind deep stacks. You've got ace 9 here, ace 9, ace 9, ace 9, and it's telling you what you should maybe do with the different holdings versus this particular flop. Also, look at the different sizings this thing has. It has, check in the green and then a light bet 1.5. Okay, this is probably actually a tournament situation. The pot's 5.5 BBs, betting 1.5, betting 4, betting 7, and then all in shove. If you have ace jack suited on this board, and I would assume ace jack suited in spades is going to be willing to get all the money in, but he's still checking an awful lot. He's betting small sometimes. He's betting bigger sometimes. And he's just going all the way with it other times. The reason why, again, is to keep your opponent from being able to determine whether you've got queen 10 or ace jack of clubs or ace jack of spades or a set of sevens or 10-7 for 2 pair or whatever. You're just trying to make sure you don't give off those patterns to your opponent. And you, again, have to memorize all these goofy scenarios and all these goofy charts and all these different bet sizes and all these different scenarios to really get it in there, to really drive it in your head. And it takes a long, long time and is very hard to do. And again, at the low stakes and even low stakes online, it's not entirely necessary to beat those games. 5 exploits, though, to consider in low stakes cash games. Number 1, change your ranges. 2, change your raise sizing. 3, use the size of your bet to target parts of your opponent's range or to bluff with. 4, adjust your C-bet frequencies. If you don't know what C-betting is, C-betting just means continuation bet. If I raise pre-flop and the flop comes out and I am going to bet again when I'm checked to or whatever, that's called a continuation bet. You're just continuing the action. Sometimes it's a bluff, sometimes it's the goods. That's part of the balancing thing that is actually very common at live low stakes or any poker in general. Number 5, overfold to opponents that don't bluff. So let's walk through them. Change your ranges. Tip number 1. If your opponents behind you are too tight, open up. Loosen up. Be aggressive though, but loosen up. If they're too loose, tighten down. In example number 1 here in the yellow, you hold 5-6 of spades. 5 of spades, 6 of spades, and it folds to you in mid position. You would normally open the pot for a raise here. However, 3 players yet to act, low jack, hijack, cutoff, button, whatever, are loose calling station types. Your hand no longer plays well multi-way and out of position post-flop. If you raise to, say, $15 and 2 or 3 of those guys call you, you're in bad shape with 5-6 suited unless you smash the flop. You should consider folding and just waiting for a stronger hand to get involved with in the first place. Wait for ace-king, wait for ace-jack, wait for pocket tens. Just tighten up. Understand you've got a bad seat at the table, and these guys are just going to be hell for you all day long because now it's a good thing when you have ace-king of diamonds. Go ahead, raise. They're probably going to call you. Now you're in a big multi-way pot with a nut-making hand like ace-king of diamonds that can really smash them and take them for a lot of money. That's a great scenario to be in. But with 5-6 suited, your weak suited connectors, even though it's a spot you would normally raise in when the action folds around to you, you have to make that exploitative adjustment. These guys behind me call too much. So I need to tighten my range up a little bit. You make a change. Example number 2, you hold 6-8 of hearts in the hijack, and there is a limper in front of you. The cutoff and the button are old men, and they're tight. Now you consider raising. You might not normally open that 6-8 of hearts from that position with a limper in front of you. However, you consider raising to isolate that limper with your button range because the odds are the old men will fold. Raise to 12, raise to 15. Old men will probably go fold, fold. Next thing you know, you got your last to act throughout the entire hand, giving you effectively 3 buttons per orbit because you get your own button, and then when you're in the cutoff, the guy to your left will probably fold, and then when you're in the hijack, the 2 guys to your left will probably fold. You can play for 3 hands per orbit. You can just play kind of wide open, and you can now when those guys call, they have a hand. You have to respect that. Put a read on them. Play accordingly, and then just go back to what you were doing, which is opening wide. When it folds around to you or limps around to you, boom. Those last 3 or even 4 spots at the table, start pounding the table frequently. Start getting in because you're going to be allowed to play last to act because your raise is going to send those old men packing quite often. It's a great way to play. It's a great seat to be in. If you're not in that scenario, get a table change or a seat change button at the casino and put yourself in a favorable position. If you have tight guys on your left and you have loose guys on your right, you're probably in a pretty good seat. Probably in a pretty profitable seat. Again, you also want kind of the tougher guys at the table on your right, or you want the fish at the table on your right. When you get to these places more often, you'll start to pick up a feel for what a good seat at that table is. And I don't do it a ton, but man, I do it. I do it not never, not rarely. If I see a seat that is better off for me and I know how to play in that seat based on the player types to my left and right, I'll get a seat change button and I'll go sit in that seat. Now, I'll make something up when, oh, the lighting's better over here. Or, this is the one you hear in the casinos all the time is, I'm not getting any cards. I'm card dead. I need to change my luck. Well, bullshit. Random distribution's random distribution, but I will use that to my advantage to sound like a fish sometimes when I'm switching seats. Hey, I'm card dead down here. I just want to change it up. Let's go see what it is. Or, hey, I want to go sit next to old Steve over there. Whatever. Don't ever tell them I'm switching seats to sit down here and steal all your money. Don't do that, obviously. Make up some excuse. Be casual. Don't let people know that that's what you're about and that that's what you're doing. But damn, do it. Get into those profitable seats as often as possible. It'll make your life easier. It'll help your win rate. So boost your win. That's what this game's all about. If I'm going to go spend 5 hours at a casino, I want it to be profitable. Number 2, change your sizing. Example, You're in the cutoff with ace queen suited and the blinds are weak, passive players that call too much and don't 3-bet often. They don't re-raise you often. I raised in the cutoff to 15. They're not going to re-raise me to 45 without aces. So I'm way ahead of Jack 10 suited, Queen 10 suited, pocket eights. I'm flipping with pocket eights if you understand the odds and coin flips and whatnot. But I can play that hand in position very, very well because the old man's going to bet at me when he hits his set, and I'm going to flop an ace and a queen, and it's a good scenario to be in. Raise even bigger than usual because they call way too much. Build a pot with a dominating hand. They're going to call with ace jack. They're going to call with ace 10 in this scenario. Instead of putting in 12 bucks, put in 15 bucks. Put in 20 bucks. Something like that. Get yourself up there. Start building a bigger pot. It compounds on itself on later streets. That's why no limit is such a damaging game. If I have a $20 pot and you call, and it's a $40 pot instead of if I'd only bet $12 and it's a $24 pot, would you rather be playing in an advantageous situation in a $40 pot or a $24 pot when you're ahead? The $40 pot. Because you put in another 30 bucks or so on the flop or on the turn, now that's 30 and 30 is 60. Now you're a $100 pot instead of in like a $40 pot. Get that pot bigger. Make more money. That's the whole object of this game anyway. Number 3, use those bet sizes, like I just talked about, to target parts of your opponent's range. You flop, say, bottom set. Board comes out 10-9-3, and you've got pocket threes. And your opponent is very sticky and rarely folds to a flop bet. Well, don't just bet 20 bucks into 30, bet 30. Don't just bet $12 into $25, bet 20, 25 bucks. Get in there. Make it bigger. If he has a piece of it he's not folding, charge him more. Get more money. Your whole idea, if you could shove all in for 150 bucks and you knew he was going to call you, then why would you ever bet $25? You just bet all in. If your flop bet is usually around half pot, bet 3/4 or even full pot. Make more money building a bigger pot with a strong hand when it is likely you're going to get called by worse hands. Now again, you've got to be observant, you've got to pay attention, you've got to be paying attention to those guys at the table, and you've got to be exploiting them. You're not doing the random GTO crap here. You know the guy's a loose calling station fish. Get paid. Get paid. Bet more. Adjust your C-bet frequencies, your continuation frequencies we just talked about. Adjust how often you C-bet bluff opponents that check raise too often or not often enough. Example number 1, you flop nothing. You have ace 10 of spades and you raise to 12 or 15 bucks and the board comes out jack 6-3. Something just stupid. You flop nothing. And you're against an opponent that rarely check raises on flops. So you bet him more often in that place, in that spot. Go ahead. 12 and 12, pots 24, throw 12 bucks out there. You don't have anything either, but shit, neither does he. And he's certainly not going to raise you back unless he has you just absolutely smoked. Bet at him. If you, some of the math into a pot size bet, if it's a $24 pot and I bet $24, that only has to work 50% of the time for me to show profit. And the less I bet, the less often it needs to work. If I threw out into $24, if I threw out a $3 bet, it only has to work like 8-9% of the time. Some people are just that fit or fold. If you've got a read on your opponent that he's just that fit, he sticks around when he has a pair, he folds when he doesn't. You don't need to bet much at him when you're bluffing. And you don't need to worry about, well, I bet small when I'm bluffing and I bet big when I've got it, and he's going to pick up on that. Most of these guys aren't going to. So, because they're going to see you mixing and matching. And plus, you've got this guy down there, Joe in seat 4 and then Dave in seat 7. And you're playing Joe differently than you play Dave because you know how those two guys play. And then anybody sitting in the middle in, say, seat 5 or seat 6 is watching you sometimes bet big, sometimes bet small, sometimes you got it, sometimes you don't. He doesn't know what you're doing. All you're doing is playing the player. And you don't know what you're doing. Example number 2, you flop nothing versus an opponent that does check raise a lot on flops with pairs and draws and just kind of puts you to the test because he thinks you're full of shit. You c-bet that guy less often on a bluff, especially with marginal hands, second pair, pocket nines on Queen 7-4. No, you you determine whether you check and call, but you're not barreling into that guy. You're not betting big, and you're not bluffing him a lot and whatever else, because he's gonna make your life hell. You're gonna sit in there with some kind of see on Queen 7-3 or whatever. Pocket nines has some showdown value. He bets into you. You can call a street. He checks to you. Check it back because you have winning chances in that. He could have ace jack. You don't know. He's a tricky opponent. If he checks and you check, he might bet with a worse hand on the turn, trying to blow you off of your hand. You might get lucky and hit your third nine and have a set of nines. He might have a draw. There's all sorts of things going on there that he's all of a sudden in a bad spot. And if he's aggressive and might start, that's fine. The problem is if he checks on the flop and you bet $12 or $15 into that $25 pot, and then he raises you to $50. Now you got to let go of your pocket nines. And he still didn't tell you if he had anything or not. He just made your life hell. Don't set yourself up in a situation like that for him to make your life hell. Control the size of the pot, control the size of the action. Against a guy like that, go ahead and just check it back and see the turn for free. That's a leak that I used to have. I mean, a big leak. I used to continuation bet almost everything because I felt better when I had momentum in the hand and just keep the momentum, and I'll give up when I say I give up. Nah, get better, get more comfortable at checking it back and then taking a bet or two because you've just induced the guy to start stabbing at you. Learn when it's better to push or when it's better to pull. Push the opponent out or pull the opponent along or whatever. And I don't mean slow play and trap and all that stuff. I just mean get better at getting into those situations and letting the hand develop a little bit. You will play much better poker for that. And again, those are things I'm working on in my own game. Those are things that I can help you with and teach you what I'm learning as I learn. Tip number 5, overfold to opponents that don't bluff. Little old man down there never bluffs, never bluffs, never bluffs. The old ace king on a board of 5, 7, 8, 10, 5. It kind of went, you raised pre-flop, he called, and it kind of goes check, 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 check. And all of a sudden on the river, he just blasts into you. Yeah, you can beat his bluffs. And that board doesn't look like it would hit an old man on a tight range or anything. But dude, he's got something. Just fold. That opponent is tight passive and he bets big into you. You can fold. He's just simply not bluffing enough for you to worry about calling here. And you're going to be wrong some, and he's going to show you the bluff, and he's going to laugh and whatever, and that's great. You don't have to win every pot. You don't have to win every single pot you're ever in. That's another leak of mine that I had to get used to. You want to win every pot, but you don't have to. And sometimes they're just not advantageous to win. And you're going to fold the winning hand sometimes in this game. You just are. You're going to get tricked. It's okay. This general scenario, though, when they don't bluff and they all of a sudden pound into you, just fold. It's so profitable in the long run. Just fold. You'll know what guys are capable of bluffing and which guys aren't. And if the guy is not typically capable of bluffing, let him bluff you. Just let him. It's okay. It's all right. Save your money. Move on. Speaking of moving on, bonus thoughts. Playing exploitative is only an issue if your opponents catch on to you and they adjust to you. And hopefully you'll see it coming. And most low-stakes players just aren't observant enough to do it. Like I said, you're playing Dave and you're playing Steve differently, and Jimmy Joe, Billy Bob in the middle isn't paying any damned attention. He's listening to his podcast, or he's drinking a beer, or he's watching the sports on TV. And if he is observing you and watching, he sees you play Dave differently than Steve, and he goes, wow, I can't tell what that guy's up to. All right. Thanks, Billy Bo, Jim Bob, whatever. Let me buy you your next beer, right? As you climb stakes, exploitative poker becomes a game of chicken. I'm exploiting you because I know you do this too much, and you're exploiting me because you know I do that too much. You don't know that I know that you know that I know that you know. That's called leveling. When you can get on that second and third level, poker gets really, really fun. But I can think of one hand in the past probably 400 hands that I've played. I can think of one hand where I think that the opponent and I were on different levels and we were kind of leveling each other. We were playing the chicken game. You will know those opponents when they happen. You will know who they are. There will be very few people you will come across in your life as a poker player that are capable of getting tricky with you. And really and truly, you shouldn't be tricky yet. You should be tricky when you're starting to beat the game and when you're a regular in a room. If you go once a month to a poker room and you haven't played, you've seen that guy before, but you haven't played with him for a few weeks, that dude ain't paying attention to you. You don't even remember how you played. You might remember how he played. Good for you. And you can make some adjustments based on, well, he called a lot the last time I was there. I shouldn't probably bluff him too much. Good for you. That's a good adjustment. That's an exploitative adjustment. Throw the whole GTO crap out because they don't become more prevalent until you get to those games of chicken and those higher levels, which guys will start to become GTO players. And at the micro stakes and stuff online, they'll play the GTO stuff, right? But even GTO players bend their ranges, their bets, their calls, their check raises, their everything. They adjust their default GTO style when they pick up on patterns to exploit, if they're any good. If I went down, let's say one of the best players in the world, we all know Daniel Negreanu, right? Good cash game player, great tournament player. I guarantee you, if I sat down with him in 15 minutes, he'd have me pegged as a fish. He would be exploiting the crap out of me in ways I didn't even know I could be exploited, and I'd never see it coming. And he can play GTO. Doug Polk, heads up, can play wicked strong heads up poker. And I've seen hand reviews by him where he's like, it's just GTO until the river, and then on the river, I think he might have missed one, but did he do that on purpose to exploit me, or was it just a miss of the GTO strategy? And then Doug Polk's all of a sudden in his head, thinking about all of the ways he went wrong himself. And did he play the hand right or not? Because that's how perfect these guys try to play at those levels. Not our levels, guys. We're so down in the slums. It doesn't matter. You go to Vegas and sit down at Horseshoe at 1-2 or go to Bellagio and play 1-2. They are not taking advantage of you. I've been there. I've been to those poker rooms. They're not any different than my St. Louis crowd to speak of. I mean, there's a few guys there that are pretty good, and you'll pick up on who they are, like I said. But generally speaking, nah. My point is, if you enjoy this type of discussion and you enjoy the communities, you enjoy the teaching and the learning and the talking and the everything else, and you like my personality and you think that I'd be a fun guy to have a beer with and get to know, then you need to join our free Discord. You need to like and subscribe to the video. You need to comment. You need to turn the notification bell on. You need to get into our Discord and you start hitting me up and you start asking me questions. I've got a whole other group of guys that are coming that we're going to build this community and we're going to make it a fun community of people talking poker. We're going to share our trips to the boat or the casino, whatever you call it in your neck of the woods. We're going to have more fun on Vegas trips, talking about places that we ate and places that, and thong wearing flappers that we saw, and the thunder from down under for the ladies out there that are commenting on me and my brother's wives as we were walking past them, and it was kind of funny. Our wives gave it right back to them. And the Thunder Down Under guys turned around and said, "You dudes need better wives." It was so funny. But that's what we're going to get to. We're going to get to lifestyle stuff. We're going to start talking about where to stay and how to stay and cheap and how to make more money playing poker and gambling and playing slots and DFS and sports betting and all of it. We're going to wrap it all. Gamblers are gamblers, dude. And if you're a gambler, you need to be part of this community. All right, that'll do it for this week. We'll wrap it up. We'll ship it off, and we'll see you next Monday. Hopefully, we've got a lot to talk about. Give me some feedback. Let me know how we're doing, and I'll talk to you another time. See ya.